I want to talk about what unfolded with Scott Adams this week. And we have, of course, talked about Scott Adams in recent podcasts. And I want to talk about this for a totally different reason. This has nothing to do with our ongoing disagreement with Scott about why it is that we were right about COVID, right? He thinks it was lucky guesses. We think it's models. And by the way, we're right. But in any case, put that aside. Scott Adams became big news again this week because he said something rather remarkable on his own daily podcast. Zach, do you want to show it?
Yep. You ready?
Yep.
I'd accidentally joined a hate group. So if nearly half of all blacks are not okay with white people, according to this poll, not according to me, according to this poll, that's a hate group. That's a hate group. And I don't want to have anything to do with them. And I would say, based on the current way things are going, the best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people. Just get the fuck away. Wherever you have to go, just get away. Because there's no fixing this.
Okay. Now, I want us to put aside our initial reaction to the content of what he says. It's very shocking, right? He's effectively arguing for a kind of segregation, self-segregation by race. And he's doing so on the basis of a poll, a Rasmussen poll. And what I want to resist doing, it's very easy to take pot shots at him after he says something like this. But I really want to pursue this a little bit deeper because it has a deeper implication. The poll in question reports that something under 50%, but not way under 50%, of black people say do not resonate with the statement that it is okay to be white.
That's the thing?
Yeah.
Do not resonate with the statement.
They do not agree that it is okay to be white.
Okay.
47% with 95% confidence that it's within 3 points. The same poll also asked whether or not...
But so people who aren't white are being asked, is it okay to be white?
Yes.
Not, is it okay? I'm confused.
Well, I mean, it is a confusing moment that such a question would make any freaking sense is an odd
Yeah,
fact.
I mean, sure, at one level, it's like, okay, we have a poll for you. Is it okay to be human? Like, I am. And, right, like, so is it okay to be an earthling? What?
Yeah, but
right, but
no.
I don't get. Was this a poll that was sort of across all Americans, and then they also took data on race, and
Yep, it was a tiny little poll, 1,000 people.
total,
Yeah.
of which some fraction of that were black people.
Yep.
Of which almost half of them said, "I do not agree with the statement. It is okay to be white."
Correct. Now, the same poll
Okay.
asked, can black people be racist? And 79% agreed that black people can be racist. So
79% of the entire poll, or of black people?
I believe 79% of black people. I would have to go back and look carefully. But nonetheless, this is a tiny poll, okay? A tiny poll, and with a suspect methodology. Very easy to screw up a poll that is a combination of a phone poll and a online survey, right? So not a huge study.
Sounds total garbage.
Yeah, total garbage. But nonetheless, it's 2023, right? Somehow we have landed in a place where the question of whether or not it is okay to be white is somehow not laughable on its face. So that is an interesting fact.
Well, I mean, so this is going to seem totally far afield, but like I cannot see this. I'm not familiar with this. Obviously, I don't know anything about the poll, but the idea that like, okay, the methods are garbage, and the question being asked is garbage as well. That sounds like, oh, where have we seen that before? Like, that sounds like medical research and scientific research. Like, oh, not only is the question you asked nonsensical in the context of the environment in which we are living, but also your methods had absolutely no way of determining whether or not absolutely no way of answering the question.
Right. Well, let's just point to one obvious bias here. Okay. The survey will obviously be biased in the direction of those who are more likely to voice an opinion. Right. And so it may be that opinionated people are heavily biased in the direction of having an extreme view, for example, and that this doesn't in any way represent the sum total. Most people might just think, well, yeah, of course, why would I participate?
What does that question even mean?
Yeah, what does that question even mean? So, but the reason that I raise it, there is a podcast that I did at the very beginning of Dark Horse, long before the live streams, I believe, in which I pointed out that one of the hazards of the woke emphasis on race and the demonizing of the concept of what they call whiteness was that it was going to drive white people together, and that was going to be a disaster, not only for everybody, but especially for people who aren't white. That this was going to effectively take this potentially powerful, lineage or pseudo-lineage, and it was going to inflame it and cause it to gather. And because it's a majority, compared to the next largest lineage in the U.S. at least, that was going to be an extremely dangerous thing to do. So it was a warning from me saying, don't do this. This is dumb, especially if your concern is the well-being of people who are from minority populations.
You are creating the very coalitions that you would have us believe are the most dangerous coalitions that exist.
Right. And Scott Adams is giving voice to the thing that will cause people to gather. What he says in this clip is literally, look, if people aren't okay with white folks, then I suggest white folks get away from them. Now, he screws up. What he said, and he should recognize it, is deeply un-American. It is deeply un-American that we should be getting away from some population, because among the many special things about this country, perhaps the most special is the experiment in which we attempt to put aside lineage level considerations and to live together as a collaborative people.
Right.
And so what he's saying, I just want to get away from those people if they're not cool with me, is exactly the opposite of what his response should be as a patriotic American. His point should be, holy hell, if that's real, what can we do about it? Right? I would also point out that even if the poll is accurate as they did it, like let's just say that none of the methodological considerations end up being important and that it is somehow representative, well, it still means that a majority of black people do think it's okay to be white. And so the idea that the right reaction to a large minority of any group coming to this also deeply un-American conclusion is to abandon the entire population and go isolate in your own racial group is insane, right? The point is, this is an all hands on deck moment, right? We need to confront the woke ideology that is attempting to demonize so-called whiteness, and we need to confront this instinct to, well, if that's what you're going to do, then we're going to X, right?
We are such a confused people. There are immutable characteristics. Sex is one of them. Your ancestry is one of them, and that maps very imperfectly onto sort of public renditions of what race you are, right? No one is pure anything almost, right? Like actually I'll just no one is pure anything. There's no pure bloods, right? Like that's an insanity. But there are people who are more Lithuanian than anything else, and people who are more African origin than anything else who are in America and therefore are African Americans. This is true, and this cannot change. Like you are what your history was, and you are what, if you're a mammal, the sperm that contributed half of what is now your genetic complement to making you who you are determined whether you are male or female. And those things don't change. And so the idea that we could be talking about whether it's okay to be something that you're born as, we live in the age of original sin. Like what is this? what kind of garbage is this? And then at the same time, you've got, apropos our conversation last week, people saying, well, people are just born with these predilections that are like horrible, like pedophilia. And like, what can you do? You just got to accept them. You can't shame them for, having these feelings that they have. There's nothing to be done about it. It's like, what, that thing, not foundational, not fundamental, not about your lineage, and also, I hazard to guess, not immutable. So no, we don't use shame. We would never advocate for shame around something that you are born with. It is something. It is fundamental to who you are. And instead, we've flipped these things. We're shaming people for their lineage. We're pretending they can change the sex that they are. And we're embracing people's kinks, which are fundamentally bad for society. 1, 2, 3. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Like, how did we get here?
You know who has a really good model that helps sort this out? We do. Here, get that book.
This book?
Yeah, that book.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So in this book, we talk about the distinction between the software layer and the hardware layer. And you may or may not love that distinction. I happen to think it's super elegant, and that the fact that it works even when you start to pursue it. Well, what about the firmware level? Yeah, well, we got that too. The point is we do function this way, and we humans are the extreme case of a creature with dual inheritance, right? We inherit the genetic stuff, which, as you point out, you can't do anything about. It's whatever happens to come together between sperm and egg. And then we get a software package loaded on. Are we a blank slate? No, but
that's too. I think in part people get confused because the software hardware analogy isn't perfect, because the software is the mutable part, the fungible part, the plastic part, right? The software from day one is beginning to be informed by the environment. Well, I guess on day one you're still up maybe in the fallopian tubes. I don't remember exactly the timing, but call it day 14 of a zygote, and the uterine environment is affecting how development happens. And there's a reason that morning sickness and aversions and cravings during pregnancy are what they are, and that's the zygotes and then the fetus's way of communicating to mom, hey, I need more of this, or like, no, not that, that's going to hurt me, right?
Yep.
So that is all the developing software. And so unlike Microsoft Word, right, where you bring it in and you can say, oh well, I actually want to see this in my ribbon and this in my toolbar. We are changing much more about what we are.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't need to get tied up in this, but my point would be all you got to do is then say, well, how good an analogy is that? And then pursue it into the computer layer, and you find out, oh, well, the same thing is true there. Not identically so, but the software that gets loaded onto the underlying computer by the manufacturer before you get around to deciding what software you want to put onto the thing. The point is it's there. And you've got an underlying hardware layer that is predisposed to emerge through genes about which you can do nothing. And then you've got every layer of flexibility in the software layer, from not much flexibility at all up through perfectly flexible. And it all works. But anyway, you're right. The point is we've reversed the order. We're now shaming people for the stuff that they can't change, and we are refusing to shame them for the stuff that they really must change. And that is an indicative of something. It is indicative of the fact that these conclusions are not based on some deep model of reality. What they are is about power, right? It is very powerful to take something that somebody cannot change and decide that it is a reason to shun them, right? Because the point is they can't, show up one day and say, well, I've dealt with it, deal with me. And it's like, no, you're still white. You still suck. You are obligated to spend all your time getting over your whiteness, and you know what? It's never going to work. So go away and work on that project and get back to me at the point that, well, you can't because it's unfixable.
Except the ideology comes to somehow an equally absurd but almost opposite conclusion over in sex space.
Right.
Oh, you can cure the problem of having been born male, because how dare you, by putting on lipstick and heels and asking to be called Martha. What did you just do, and why? What on earth are half-ish of the country doing? Going along with it, nodding, going like, yeah, you go, girl. What is happening?
Right. No, it's absurd. And, I don't know how many times we're going to see this pattern, right? It's one thing to not understand anything and to have a random response.
Right.
It's another thing to invert reality and to take the immutable and treat it as perfectly plastic, and to take the perfectly plastic and treat it as immutable. That's not just wrong. It's upside down of right. And
It's upside down of right. And I think to get back to this question of like, oh, well, will the hate campaign that's masquerading as loving tenderness and woke ideology cause segregation, which in turn will cause ever greater division? Yeah, it will. And is it better for us to be interested in hanging out with people who aren't exactly like us? Yes. Are we obliged to do that all the time? No. Are we in fact obliged to do whatever? No. But do we find our worlds enhanced and better in every regard when we do? Yes. This holds for sex, for race, for religion, for politics, for level of education, for trade, for career, for basically across the board, right? So does that mean that you should never, ever, ever hang out with people like you? Like you shouldn't go to a conference for biologists or hang out in an all-women space or have a friend group that is all Black and sometimes say, you know what, it's us going to be here today and love you, but like not you today. It's going to be us. That's all good too.
Yep.
Right? Like we actually can have that both ways. We can know that it's better to, as a life choice, be embracing of actual difference, like actual diversity, be inclusive of actual diversity, while also allowing for people to make individual choices that hopefully aren't the sum of all of their choices, in which they say, right now, because I need to learn more accounting, I'm going to go hang out with the accountants. And right now, because this is where my headspace is right now, you're going to go hang out with a bunch of men. And right now, I'm going to hang out with a bunch of, Ukrainians, whatever it is, right? Like that's also okay. You can have it. You can have this both ways. And somehow we're being told any choice that we make, if we have certain immutable characteristics, is inherently wrong, and we have to go along with the fantasies of crazy people.
Yeah. I would also point out that those who are most likely to just simply narrowly take Scott Adams to task for his un-American outburst are also likely to be people who have caused the problem. This is why I delivered that warning all those years ago, that if you do this, if you demonize people over their race, whether that race is understood to be a privileged one or not, you are going to reinvent this problem, which we had not solved, but we were definitely on our way to solving it.
Yeah.
The West had understood correctly that the right thing to be is a colorblind society. Colorblind not meaning that we don't notice each other's color. It means that it is not an indicator of your likelihood of success. It does not predispose you to succeed in a court of law or a classroom or anything. It's just a simple fact like your hair color or your language of your birth.
Yeah, I'm going to take one objection there because I do think that some of the language that we use easily is maybe contributing to the confusion, which is that in this case, we hadn't solved it. What I will tend to say is, but we were moving in the right direction. And I really honestly believe that we were moving pretty fast in the right direction. It was getting ever better. But I would say not. I think what you said was we might have solved it, or we could have solved it, or something like that. And I know that you don't think that there's a static solution to be had. And maybe it's an asymptote, but even if it's an asymptote, that asymptote itself will move because people are going to people.
No. I don't agree with this. The asymptote is the line of formal colorblindness of your society. You're allowed to be any color. It's allowed to have its implications
Yeah,
for...
but some individuals are gonna not buy in.
Well, but the point is, the asymptote is the degree to which everybody's on board with the idea that your color ought not predispose you to succeed in any context. It's just a simple fact of who you are. It's not a predictive fact on the basis that you have advantages coming from one race or another. So anyway, the asymptote is us collectively are reaching a place where basically the asymptote is Martin Luther King Jr.'s I have a dream, right? It is, you are judged on the content of your character and not the color of your skin. And, the degree to which we are approaching the asymptote is the degree to which everybody's on board with that.